What would you think of a crate engine that was engineered by pro stock guys for the street? That's what we have done. You build your own motor for your own specific needs.
Dart. The name alone strikes fear in the hearts of competitors. If you're running against Dart parts, you might find yourself a day late and a few feet short of the finish line. In this video, you'll get an inside look at the state-of-the-art Dart machine manufacturing facility and learn not only what makes Dart so much horsepower, but what makes this Detroit, Michigan-based company truly different.
The biggest advantage we got over everybody is our people really care about what they build, and they're the best at what they do. I'm Dick Maskin, and we're past year 30. 110 individuals and myself working 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, making engine parts and doing development on engine parts. We run the dyno, we run the spintron, we run the wet flow bench. All our machinos are making heads and blocks. We're making billet engines, billet blocks, billet heads with water. We're the first at many, many things. We're racers just like you are. We're creating engines and engine parts to go quicker, have more reliability, and utilize all the infrastructure that we've created in order to build good engines, the best engines for you and everybody else.
At Dart, we have 4 basic product lines: engine blocks, cylinder heads, short block assemblies and top-end kits, and intake manifolds and accessories. We manufacture cast iron and aluminum blocks, small blocks, big blocks, Chevrolet, Ford.
Dart's Pro Stock technology is the foundation underneath the cylinder head line. Dart manufactures a wide range of aluminum and iron cylinder heads for all domestic makes. From street bolt-on heads to 9-degree small block race heads to all-out radical Pro Street, Pro Mod, and Pro Stock heads, Dart has an engineered solution. Dart's in-house CNC machines and finishing facility take the raw castings and precisely machines them in race or street-ready heads, customized to any particular combination and engine.
SHP consists of cylinder heads, engine blocks, top-end kits, and assembled short blocks, all designed to make engine building easier and more affordable for the enthusiast.
Along with blocks, heads, and SHP parts, Dart also manufactures intake manifolds, accessories, special coatings, and service parts in-house. These are more complementary to the Dart line, but they do represent Dart's commitment to make the right parts at the right price. When you order an engine combination from Dart, you can add these components from the Dart line to get a completely Dart engineered package.
At Dart, we put a lot of effort into quality control. One of our newest acquisitions is a Zeiss coordinate measuring machine that has a passive scanning capability that can measure extremely accurately.
One of the things that makes Dart unique is the fact that Dart parts are engineered, tooled up, cast, and machined right here in the United States. Dart believes that they can offer a better quality part for less by making the parts here in Michigan. Part of how they can do that is superior equipment, but another big part of it is a commitment to being efficient while providing good customer support.
When you buy a part from Dart, you just don't buy the part. You buy all of our experience, all our ingenuity, and you buy us and our guarantee to you that this stuff is going to do what we say it's going to do. And we stand behind what we do 1,000%.
Dart is a company that stands for a lot of what is best about America. It's a company not only putting their customers in the winner's circle, but making some really kick-ass street parts as well.
What would you think of a crate engine that was engineered by pro stock guys for the street? That's what we have done. You build your own motor for your own specific need.
NHRA Pro Stock. Hundredths of a second separate first to last place. Millions spent to find a few horsepower. Aren't you glad someone figured it out for you? Let's send it over to NHRA announcer Bob Fry as he takes us through Dart's small block Chevy heads.
We stopped by Dart Machine in Michigan to review their redesigned Platinum small block Chevy heads. Now, Dart offers two types of small block heads, the Iron Eagle and the Aluminum Pro 1. The technology is shared from the iron to the aluminum heads, though the Pro 1 weighs less and comes CNC bowl blended. Intake port sizing ranges from 200 to 230 cc's. From technology to initial and final machining, we're going to show you what it takes to make Dart's race-inspired heads. But before we do that, let's check in with Dart's founder, Richard Maskin.
We built a small block Chevy and put it in a Don Ness Firebird, and we never built a small block Chevy, or at least in years and years and years. Those heads are the basis for Dart's development with the small block. We ran those heads in 79 and 80, and the first Dart 2 head was based on the technology that I had accumulated through 1981. In 1986 or 7, the Dart 2 head came out, and that head hasn't been changed since I designed it in 1986. By the time we got to building the 1997 version, we'd won quite a few pro stock races, won a championship, and when we went to design that head, all that input went into it. Although the head still fits on the same engine, uses relatively the same size valves and components, the power levels that the head can produce is up about 100 horsepower since what I learned in 1981. So essentially what you're looking at is a painting that we're never going to get to finish as we keep working on these heads.
Part of Dart's cylinder head technology involves using Dart's wet flow bench to optimize cylinder head port design and flow in real-world conditions. Here you see a Dart small block Chevy head being flowed on the bench. This allows the head to be tested just like it would be used on an engine, with air and fuel flowing through the ports. This has led to a dramatic improvement in Dart's combustion chamber shaping. Now that you have an understanding of the technology involved in developing Dart's heads, let's see how they are manufactured. Dart's Machining Center is where all Dart's raw iron and aluminum castings are received. All castings are designed with tensile strength in mind. The idea is to allow the heads to flex so they do not fracture, but in a way that allows the heads to return to their original shape after a heat cycle. All heads are machined on an 8-station cube fixture. The fixture simplifies the process of turning the heads from raw castings to finished products. The machining centers will perform such operations as clearance for push rods, initial valve jobs, valve spring seats, valve stem holes, and all mounting holes. Iron heads differ slightly by the cutters used and the machine time. The heads are then shipped to Dart's Technology Center where they receive final machining and assembly. All heads are then deburred. The CNC Pro 1 heads will move to the 5-axis CNC machine where they will be bowl blended and ported to exact specifications. The CNC machine surpasses hand porting in both speed and consistency. The heads are washed after all machining is complete. They will then be boxed or assembled. Assembled heads receive stainless valves, springs, and retainers. That's it from Dart. We showed you everything from design to final production. So the next time you drive your Dart-headed street rod, remember, you're running a little Pro Stock technology.
What would you think of a crate engine that was engineered by Pro Stock guys for the street? That's what we have done. You build your own motor for your own specific need.
Cut from a single piece of billet aluminum. Each cut crafted like a painter's brushstroke. Custom tailored for your racing needs. Dart's custom-made billet blocks and heads are engineered around your vision to make the maximum power you need to win races. Take a look inside as we show you how a 500-pound piece of billet turns into a 150-pound big block that's destined to create over 3,000 horsepower from a pro-modified race car.
Very common and popular options in billet block technology are very tall decks, wide bore spacing, wide pan rails, tall cam locations, moved and revised lifter angles and or lifter placement. All these attributes really help to design a bigger and better engine. Dart also is very good at thinking outside the box. As we provide the option to engine builders and racers, when they're able to dream, we're able to assist them to achieve that dream.
Now that you have an idea about the effort it takes to just design a custom set of heads or block, let's take a look at how these parts are born from huge blocks of aluminum. All of Dart's billet cores derive from a drawn process, in which the manufactured aluminum is drawn through rollers shortly after it's poured to help compress and align its grain structure. The foundry then inspects the grain structure on a microscopic level and identifies the location of the strongest part of the core. This is where Dart machines the crankshaft's main journals. Once Dart receives the raw blocks from the foundry, they're cut to the point at which the block or heads looks mostly like it should, with all the critical holes, like bores and intake ports, left with more material. The roughed out pieces then go to heat treat to help harden the metal. Sometimes specifications can change slightly during heat treat, which is why Dart leaves in this additional material in place. The final stop for the billet heads and blocks is Dart's headquarters in Troy, Michigan. Here, the billet pieces go through a rigorous visual inspection of virtually every hole in the parts. At this point, the heads can be shipped to the customer, or there are further finishing options that can be performed on the heads. Some of these options include the installation of valve guides and seats, plus a custom port and polish job on Dart's 5-axis CNC machine. The blocks have a few more steps before they're ready for shipment. First, they are line honed, then immediately bore honed to make way for the ductile iron sleeves. Once the hone is completed, the block is heated to slightly expand the bores to allow for easier installation of the sleeves. At this point, the block is ready to ship to the customer. Dart's billet block and heads program allows engine builders to fully customize the design of an engine to create a truly one-off engine combination. It allows for a variety of engine enhancements to squeeze every ounce of power from every cylinder. Now the next time you head to the racetrack and see a 5-second Pro Mod go screaming down the track, you'll know a little bit more about the technology and care that goes into building these 3,000-plus horsepower engines.
These are Dart's Iron Eagle cylinder heads. They're widely known as one of the best performance values on the market. But we wanted to test to see what the performance per value was really like, so we came up with an idea. And here is the engine builder's classic bargain. A set of stock Chevy cylinder heads I picked up for 50 bucks. We're going to take them all the way through a dyno comparison and see how they actually add up. Our Dart heads are a set of new Iron Eagle as-cast heads. We ordered them up with fairly standard 64cc combustion chambers, 180cc intake runners, and straight cut plugs. We also got them complete from Dart with 2-inch 20 thousandths intake valves and 1-inch 600 thousandths exhaust. valve springs that are capable of handling over 600 thousandths valve lift, locks, and retainers. Our plan is to test these heads exactly as they came out of the box. We're not touching a thing on these bad boys. But it's a different story with the stock Chevy heads. Here's a look at what 50 bucks will get you these days. Not much. These are Chevrolet 882 large chamber heads. We would have preferred a pair of the more performance-oriented double hump heads, but most of those have been picked over by racers, and not only are they difficult to find, but a well-used pair will probably run you upwards of $300. We enlisted the help of performance engine builder Jeff Dorton of Automotive Specialists to assist us with our test. After an initial inspection of the heads, where we discovered these heads have already been repaired and worked over with oversized exhaust valve guides, the first step was a thorough cleaning and a session in the blasting tank. After noticing some signs of previous repair work, we took the precaution to magniflux both heads and found small cracks around one of the exhaust valve seats. Because of that, Dorton went to the effort to pressure test that head for a leak. Thankfully, we didn't find a leak and our comparison could continue. If this head were going in a car, however, it would be trashed and we'd be back to square one, but we decided we could risk it for the dyno test. Next up on the repair refurbish task list is pulling the pressed-in rocker studs because they simply won't hold up in a performance application. After that, a couple hours were required to cut down the rocker stud bosses and cut and tap them for screw-in studs. The Iron Eagles not only arrived with provisions for screw-in studs, but Dart even includes the studs and the pushrod guide plates, so all that time and money is saved on the new head. Following that, Dorton moved on to install new valve guides in the stock Chevy heads. This is an expensive step, but one you shouldn't avoid. New guides cost about 10 bucks each, so that's about 160 bucks, plus around another $150 for labor just to install the guides, cut them down to accept seals, and hone them to the correct size for the valve stem. But putting new valves in worn guides will lead to excessive valve wear, and that increases the likelihood of a broken valve which can destroy your engine. Because the 882 cylinder heads aren't exactly known as performance pieces, we wanted to give them every chance to be competitive against the Dart Iron Eagles. So when it came time to cut new valve seats, Dorton pulled out all the stops, and Dorton used the same CNC controlled precision equipment to cut our valve seats as he uses for his Sprint Cup heads. Besides an ultra-precise valve job, he also opened up the intake valve as much as possible. We were able to add another 200 thousandths of an inch on the intake to get the valve diameter up to 1 inch 940 thousandths, but we couldn't go any farther because it started intruding into the exhaust valve seat. But we're still a long way off from the 2 inch 20 thousandths intake valves that Dart installs on its head. After that, Dorton spent some quality time hand blending the new larger seats into the port. This is definitely more love than any pair of 882 heads deserves to receive, but again, we wanted to give them every advantage. Meanwhile, the Dart Iron Eagle sat on the workbench ready and waiting. By the way, the value of what Dorton is doing is worth over $1,000 on these stock heads. But to keep the cost comparison fair, we decided to charge a market value of $200. Finally, we decked the Chevy heads, not only to square everything up, but also to reduce the chamber size as much as possible. Automotive Specialist was able to cut several thousandths off the deck until they actually started cutting into the intake valve seat. After CCing the chambers, they measured out at 69 cc's, which is still 5 larger than the 64 cc Iron Eagles. All told, we spent the better part of 3 days working on these Chevy heads. Conservatively calculated, we spent $730 on parts including valves, springs, guides, rocker studs, guide plates, retainers, locks, and everything else required to get these heads into shape. On top of that, we figured a market rate of $840 in labor. And again, this is a conservative number. Altogether, we're talking $1,570 just to get a pair of used stock heads into running condition. For comparison's sake, the Dart Iron Eagles that are ready to run right out of the box can be had for around $1,250 complete. Next up came a complete test of each head's ability to move air on the flow bench. Dorton flowed both heads back to back to get a true comparison. And while we knew that the stock heads were significantly improved compared to the way they left the factory thanks to these new larger valve seats, it was surprising to see just how much they lagged behind the Iron Eagles. At 500 thousandths of an inch of valve lift, the reworked Chevy heads produced a respectable 193.6 CFM of flow through the intake ports and 117.5 through the exhaust. But that paled in comparison to the 216.6 CFM the Iron Eagles could move through its intake port and 157.1 through the exhaust. Take a look on this chart. Between 200 and 500 thousandths valve lift, which is where the engine is doing its heavy lifting, the Dart head averaged 22 more CFM through the intake and an amazing 30 through the exhaust. That's improvements of 13 and 28% respectively. And finally, it was time to put these heads on an engine and put them to the only test that really matters, power production. For our dyno test, the short block is fairly standard Chevrolet 350. It's got a scat crank and rods with molly pistons. The camshaft is fairly standard. It's 248-252 with about a half-inch lift. We'll start off with the stock heads and see what a freshly revived set of Chevrolet 882s are really worth. To help keep things equal, we use the same 1.5:1 ratio comp cam steel rockers. The intake is Dart's excellent dual plane unit, and the carburetor is a box stock Holley 650 CFM 4-barrel. The camshaft is a solid flat tappet, and the rockers were lashed at 25 thousandths for the intake and 22 thousandths for the exhaust of both heads. First up were the reworked shakes. Just like on the flow bench, the performance is respectable, especially considering how much work Dorton put into them. The torque peaked at 397 at 4,500 RPM, and it produced 382 horsepower at 5,500 RPM. Certainly, no stock 882 head can touch these numbers, and we're pretty certain all the improvements we made put these heads well within the range of the more desirable double hump heads. Up next, we dusted off the Dart Iron Eagle heads and bolted them up. As you can see, we didn't even bother painting them. They are exactly the way they came out of the box, and after setting the timing back to where it worked best for the 882s, we allowed the engine to idle until the oil warmed up and then let her rip. Once again, where the numbers for the heavily reworked Chevy heads looked respectable at first glance, they got pretty anemic when compared to the mark the box stock Dart Iron Eagle cylinder heads put up. Where the stock heads plateaued at around 5,400 RPM, the Iron Eagles matched that peak number by 4,600 RPM and hadn't dropped back below it when we stopped the pull at 6,500 RPM. The Iron Eagles put up a peak number of 446.6 horsepower, which is an astounding improvement of 64.2 horsepower over the competition. The torque improved just as significantly, 437 at 4,100 RPM, which is 40 better than the reworked stock heads. Overall, Dart's Iron Eagle cylinder heads outperformed our so-called bargain heads in every category. To get the Chevy heads just to the point where they can run on an engine, we spent nearly $350 more than it cost to just order up a set of brand new Dart heads. Add to that the power difference, and it's obvious that the modern technology Dart put into its Iron Eagle cylinder heads makes them simply unmatched when it comes to performance for your hard-earned dollar.